Hey everyone, it's Carter King. If you're an educator, a leader, or just a parent who wants to teach kids about space, check out my newest book, Carter's Journey Through Space. It's available now on Amazon, Target, and bookstores everywhere. Come explore the universe with me.
Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create environments where people thrive. Through real conversations, practical strategies, and powerful stories, we equip leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself to build cultures rooted in purpose, performance, and authenticity. Because culture isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. This is the Contagious Culture Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal on this podcast is simple: to help you create ecosystems and environments where people thrive. Look, today I'm fired up. I'm fired up. Peggy, I am so excited to talk to you this morning. I have stalked you online. Oh my gosh. And the work that you are doing is transformational. Your ability to teach, empower, equip, and educate audiences literally all over the place is super exceptional. And I'm just so excited for you to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How are you doing this morning, Peggy?
Great, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Kyle.
Oh, thanks so much. For people that have no idea about the great work that you are doing and who you are, could you just introduce yourself and talk about what got you to doing the work that you're doing today?
Well, I love teaching people about gratitude and methods for well being that take very little time, very little money, because that's what we need when we're going through rough times. And that's exactly when I discovered what worked for me. Actually, I teach things that I used to do as a child that felt good and then just kept on doing them. And there, as I became a psychologist, I became so interested in the research behind these ideas. So I love teaching things that are not only easy to implement, but are also backed by research in psychology. And this, I was really put to the test in my mid 20s when my fiancé passed away. And then 6 weeks later, my father died.
Oh my
And I was grieving the two most important men in my life. And it was gratitude that got me through those horrible, painful days. And so I know with certainty that gratitude is most powerful on our worst days. Not to save gratitude for your good days, it is most powerful on your worst days. So that is the message that I love to share with other people, including really simple, actionable steps that people can take every day to feel better and live a more fulfilling life.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, and I appreciate you just opening up with, your vulnerability and your story. I've heard on one end how important gratitude is, and I have a gratitude journal, and I actually now have a gratitude jar that any moment or anything that happens, I'm putting it in there. And but I've never heard of it from the psychology side and the science behind it as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about the science behind it from the psychology side?
Yes, two wonderful things happen. Well, more, but what two that I'd like to talk about? First, when we think about what we're grateful for, we get serotonin and dopamine released in our brains. Those are two neurotransmitters that are responsible for feeling good. Particularly, dopamine helps to elevate mood, and serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's associated with having enough. So, after you get that after a great conversation with a good friend, a wonderful meal, when you've watched a good movie. So, automatically, those two neurotransmitters are released in our brain and make us feel good. The other thing that happens is when we practice gratitude on a regular basis, we truly are forming new neural pathways to be a more positive thinker. We see the world in a different way, through a different lens. Now, our problems don't go away, the world problems don't go away, but the way we see the world changes. And that makes all the difference in the world. And we can see from with functional MRIs that these new neural pathways are being formed. And it used to be that we relied upon self-report, and everybody reports that gratitude makes you feel better. I have never come across a study that showed that you felt worse. So it's always an improvement. But I love that now we can see with advances in technology what is happening in our brains when we think about what we're grateful for.
Oh my gosh. I I did this as an activity to keep me balanced and keep me humble and just to continue to keep me just grounded. But I never realized how much science was behind it as well. And it's interesting because I've been doing it now for about, I would say 2 to 3 months. And I do recognize how I've just continued to just feel a light or a flow in my life that's so much different than before. What are things that people can do on a day-to-day basis for them to begin to do this work and commit to not only these practices, but what I would say a new lifestyle?
My favorite way is to express appreciation for one person every day. And the reason I like this so much is because, in addition to gratitude, it is tapping into the number one predictor of well being, and that is our relationships. So, any time that you spend cultivating your relationships is time well spent. So, every day, thinking about one person in your life that you are grateful for and reaching out to that person. On a very busy day, this could be a 30-second text, but if you have more time, I highly recommend writing a handwritten gratitude letter. And there's research behind this as well. There was a study that looked at 300 college students. 100 received counseling only, 100 received counseling and they were instructed to write about their day, and 100 received counseling and they were instructed to write one gratitude letter once a week for 3 weeks. So they only wrote 3 letters. And at the 4-week mark, they measured their self-reported happiness. And the group that wrote the gratitude letters had the biggest boost in mood. And these were all students who were diagnosed with clinical depression. So it is an extremely powerful way to take care of your own mental health. And it's so wonderful that another person gets to benefit also by receiving your handwritten gratitude letter. And we don't get anything handwritten in the mail anymore. So just seeing that letter in your mailbox lights up your mood. So it's a wonderful way to foster your relationships and think about one person every day that you can reach out to and let that person know how much they mean to you.
It's so interesting that you say that, Peggy, because I feel like the only handwritten letters that I've gotten over the last few years is from my mom. And like, she sends me these handwritten letters and then like care packages. And I'm like, Mom, I'm in my 30s now. Like, you don't have to send me care packages. But it's interesting. It's never about what's in the box. And I love the things that are in the box. I always keep the letters. I always keep the letters that she puts in these amazing cards. And I have this like wooden box in my closet that I keep all of the letters. And sometimes when I'm having a day or when I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, I just go in that box and read through various letters that I have gotten over the years. So it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because for me as the receiver, I get so much joy and peace from just receiving those handwritten letters. But I've never thought on the other side, the importance of sharing and being able to actually write those letters. So Peggy, I'll put you on the spot. Who's your person that you're appreciative for or grateful for today?
Today, I would say I just went on a walk with my wonderful friend and neighbor, and we've known each other for 20 years, and I am grateful for her friendship, and that about once a week for decades now, we've been able to connect and share what's going on in our lives, and it's just really important to me to have that to look forward to every week. I appreciate her.
I love that. Peggy, one thing that I recognize is that there's a lot of internal blocks or really beliefs or narratives that we have within our minds that most times block us from being able to feel that joy or feel that fulfillment, especially midlife. And I know you've talked about this in your work as well. Can you talk about what these blocks are and then how we overcome some of those blocks as well?
One of the blocks is that it needs to be something huge. So I encourage people to keep it simple. Consider what you might be taking for granted. Our brains cannot distinguish the difference between feeling gratitude for something that we label as humans as small or something huge. Our brain does not care. The same thing happens. And the small is available to us every single day. And that's also my story, how I discovered the power of gratitude for myself. I was an ungrateful teen. I was an ungrateful young adult. It took tragedy in my life to discover the power of gratitude for myself. And it was through a simple cup of hazelnut coffee. When my fiance was sick and going through the cancer treatment and he was in the hospital, the one thing that I could enjoy with predictability was that cup of hazelnut coffee. When my whole world was turned upside down, it made me feel better. So that is what I encourage people to look for this simple. It's available to us every day, and our brain does not care. That's just a human label that we put on it.
Man, Peggy, you're really speaking to me right now, and I'm really enjoying this conversation because I get caught up in the massive and the great big things rather than really honoring the simple. But lately, I find the simple of just cleaning my house, watching a movie on my couch, and just enjoying that moment of silence and of solitude. You know, that moment where you get your two kids down at night and the house is super peaceful and quiet, and you can just enjoy that moment. When I think about, though, the work that I'm doing, what would you say to someone like me or the leader that's listening in that has that battle between, all right, well, I don't want to just focus on the simple because I have work to do or I have these priorities to focus on? Where do we find that balance in our days and in our lives?
I would suggest starting with the simple, a daily practice every morning, and it makes everything else more pleasant, more achievable. It makes our problems seem less daunting when we first take care of ourselves in the morning. And through the simplest of things, it could be just stepping for a minute outside in nature and gazing toward the sun. Anything at all that makes you feel good, whether it's listening to music for a few minutes, doing a gratitude journal, anything that makes you feel good in the morning that is simple, you carry that with you into your day and make the tasks of the day easier to accomplish.
Now, Peggy, I know you're in the New York area, and that's an insane, chaotic area. What are some of your favorite hidden gems or inspiring relaxation things that you do on your end to focus on the simple? Because New York is everything but simple.
Yeah. Well, even though I'm in the New York area, I am about an hour west, so I can hop into the city at any time. But I'm in a kind of equestrian area, so I'm very blessed that I can step out my door and really go on an amazing hike in any direction. But because I do get this question a lot, how can we seek awe in urban environments? What I love about awe is it is available everywhere. We can find awe in architecture. We can find awe in human connection. I love the work of Dr. Keltner. He calls them the 8 wonders of awe or something like that. And he goes over 8 different ways that we can experience awe in the simplest of ways. One is called moral beauty, when you witness beautiful human interaction. And when you know what these are, your brain helps you to find them. So I only mentioned a few, but I love that we can find it in architecture and even through tiny pieces of like weeds growing in through cracks of a sidewalk can be really amazing. So that it is available in urban environments. So I said, look at faces, look at people, look at human connections, and how just a bustling city. I got my doctorate in New York City, so I am familiar with the hustle and bustle.
Yeah.
I'm not in it right now. But awe is available everywhere. And when we intentionally seek it, our brains help us to find it even more.
And just for our listeners on the audio as well as on the video, the 8 wonders of awe are moral beauty, nature, collective effervescence, music, visual design, spirituality and religion, life and death, and epiphany. Peggy, when you think of all of those, what's the most important one to you?
The most important to me, the one that's had the biggest impact on my life, is nature. What I love about awe in nature is that you don't need to do a thing. Nature does the work for you. And I often talk in my writings and in my memoir about how the mountains helped me heal when I was grieving in a way that, yes, my friends did, and so many other methods that I used for healing. But there was something so incredibly powerful about the vast mountains that helped me to heal grief. What's interesting about being in nature and experiencing awe in nature, it helps to quiet the chatter in our brains. It helps negative thinking go away, and for us to tune into our intuition, and whatever might be going on in our lives to help us to heal. It is really incredibly powerful, and I love the science behind it. There are also studies on the power of trees and what it does for our mental health, as
Wow.
well as water. A great book called Blue Mind that talks about all the science and how we are biologically connected to water, and how just being in, on, around, or underwater helps with our mental health. So when I'm out in nature, I purposefully look for trees and water to maximize those benefits.
I really appreciate you, Peggy, for sharing all these resources because I'm a reader and I'm always looking for different books to check out. So I definitely pulled up the Blue Mind book. So I'm excited to put that in my Amazon cart after the episode. What
It's
is a
amazing.
book or a book or a podcast or an article or something that you've read over the last few years that just really transformed the way that you thought, that you moved, that you lived your life?
Probably the number one is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I
Okay.
read that. It was the first book I read after my fiance and my father died, when this man in a concentration camp was able to have a positive attitude when everything was taken from him. And he said they could not take his attitude. And that had a tremendous impact on me, that life could be good again, that I could, if he could do it, that I could overcome my grief as well. It was so incredibly inspirational and powerful for me. So I would say that book. And I often share that with people when they are going through difficult times. Sometimes we need to see that somebody else has done it to show us that we can get through a difficult time on our own as well.
Could you define meaning for us? I think that I've heard a lot of definitions, and people identify or define meaning as all of these different things, but how would you define meaning?
I would define meaning as fulfillment and satisfaction in your life.
Mm,
And our brains tend to overcomplicate things, and meaning can be so simple, just like gratitude. Bring it down to the simple. The meaning can be human connection, and really that's one of my main goals and how I cultivate meaning in my life. And that also came out of Viktor Frankl's book, when he talks about the ways that we can cultivate meaning in our lives. Human connection is one of them. And I love that that's also supported by the research, particularly the longitudinal study out of Harvard that looks at relationships over the course of decades. And the number one predictor of well being is our human relationships.
wow. I love that. Oh my gosh, Peggy. And one of the things that you prioritize is your peace method. And what I found is that it focuses on mental health and well-being. I'd love for our listeners to learn what this peace method is and how they could be able to utilize that within their day-to-day practices as well.
So basically, with the peace method, I took my 30 years of being a mental health professional and looked at people's main pain points, and then what helps. So the peace, the acronym, stands for things that help, that we need to cultivate every single day. Now that might sound like a lot, but these are things that people are probably doing anyway. I just to help to highlight them for you so you keep doing them every day. So the P is for positivity, maintaining a positive mindset. And that's not just thinking positive all of the time. I call it the positive mindset grid. And within that grid, we also have to deal with our negative thoughts. We also have to cultivate positive mood, and we need to deal with our painful emotions. All of those are part of developing a positive mindset, not just thinking positive all of the time. So that's P. The next is E for exercise. It's obvious, but moving our body is essential for well-being. The next is A for achievement, and I work with a lot of high achieving people, so I talk about it in a different way.
Hey, it's Kyle. Sorry to interrupt your programming, but I got a quick culture check for you. How's your team's energy right now? I mean, literally, right now. Are people feeling inspired? Or are they just showing up? See, here's the truth. Culture doesn't change because we talk about it. It changes because we live it actively every single day. And that's what I help organizations do. Build contagious cultures that people actually want to be a part of. Through keynote talks, interactive trainings, and hands-on consulting, I help leaders transform the way their teams connect, perform, and grow. So if your culture needs a little bit of spark, let's light it up together. Visit theculturelab.org, again, theculturelab.org, or connect with me directly on LinkedIn at Kyle S. King to learn more about how we can work together. Because remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching. Now let's get back to the program.
That it is kind of taking a break from constantly trying to achieve big things and connecting to your present life and enjoying the journey and celebrating all of the small wins along the way, kind of rewiring the brain for what achievement is. And once again, that could be connecting with somebody. It doesn't have to be finishing a chapter of a book. We can have wonderful, beautiful achievements that we can celebrate every single day. The next is C for connection. And I talk about many different ways that people can connect with others, including, yes, our friends and family, but also highlighting the importance of complete strangers. There is a loneliness epidemic going on in the world. And when we talk with strangers, it's an opportunity for connection. All connections matter. I use a lesson called "There's no such thing as small talk, it's all talk." And I use the acronym ALL to help people with what to say when you're talking to a complete stranger. A for anything. It's okay if you talk about the weather. It's okay if you talk about traffic. It's something. Anything matters. L for like. How can you compliment that person? And the next L for learn. What's a question you can ask? So remember, there's no such thing as small talk. It all matters, and use the acronym ALL. First, that's C for connection. And then the last E is empathy. And I like to mix things up a little bit. So we often think about empathy as giving to others and feeling for others, and that's wonderful. But if we don't take care of ourselves first, then it will lead to burnout. So I start with the module E for empathy with self-compassion, really building up your self-compassion and self-love so that you are in a better place to be able to give to others in ways that feel good for you and do not lead to burnout, instead lead to fulfillment.
Peggy. I love that. I love the acronym. And, it's interesting because one of the letters that spoke the most to me is achievement, the A. And you really spoke to me because I am a person that focuses a lot on outcome, where I have to finish this chapter, I have to clear my email before I go to sleep, or I have to do these specific activities or tasks. But you look at it differently, where it's calling your parents just to check in is an achievement. You being able to just go outside and maybe just sit under a tree and just take some time to think and take some time for you is an achievement. And I think it connects with the empathy and that self-compassion and just giving yourself time and space to be able to just be. That really spoke to me, because in a world where everything is being thrown at you and you have all of these different targets and activities and you want to be so productive and you want to grow and you want to change people's lives, taking that time for you to re-identify or redefine what achievement even looks like gives me the grace to be able to just enjoy the being process of life rather than feeling like I just have to continue to achieve the next thing.
Yes. And it needs to happen in order to combat that high achieving cycle, which can lead to burnout. And one of the methods that I help people is what I call the 3 Ps. So anything that you are doing, focus on the 3 Ps. The first P is pleasure. What pleasure are you getting out of that? The next is present, connecting to your present life. Yes, you might be working on a goal that might take a month or even a year, but what are you doing today? So P for present. And then the last P, purpose. Like, why are you doing it in the first place? What purpose is it giving you? So focusing on those 3 Ps helps to combat what I call the high achieving cycle.
What do you think it takes for people to unravel or unwind how they are thinking so that they can be more 3P focus, where we're focusing on pleasurable activities, we're focused on being present, and we're really doing work that is in alignment with purpose? Like, what will it take?
2 things: intention and repetition. And that's it. So it really just starts with intention and just being mindful that that is your goal, And then due to a wonderful part of our brain, the reticular activating system, that helps to filter out what we're not paying attention to and hone in on what we are in terms of a goal achievement, our brain will help us achieve that goal behind the scenes. So when you set your intention to focus on those 3 Ps or to be more grateful in your life, whatever it may be, your brain will help you to achieve that through the power of the reticular activating system. And then the next is repetition. Anything that we're working on with everything needs repetition, whether we're lifting weights and trying to build muscle, whether a gratitude practice, or working on this combating the high achieving cycle through the 3 Ps, intention and repetition.
One of my biggest realizations over the last maybe year or so is that grief isn't just losing someone physically. Like, there's so many layers to grief in our life. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier in that process that you had to go through. How does grief and loss shape the way that we experience joy? And can the two really coexist?
They can absolutely coexist. And that is actually something that I talk about often, because so often when people are grieving, when joy slowly creeps in, people can start to feel guilty for they just lost a loved one, and it can feel like a foreign feeling or even cause guilt. So I like to teach people that they absolutely can coexist, and joy becomes even more beautiful and powerful when you have gone through a loss. And you can even look at it as a way to honor your loved one who has passed. They would not want you to be sad. They would want you not to get over it and move on. We do need to move through grief and grow, but joy can be part of that.
I find that a lot of times when people are going through that process, whether it's the grieving process or just the personal development process or an unbecoming process, oftentimes they find that they have to isolate and pull back from people rather than pull forward. And community has been so important in my life. And I talk about this a lot. And cultivating joy and well-being, how important are relationships and community? And I guess to layer that question, what can we do to strengthen those connections in our lives?
Once again, it goes back to intention. When you are intentional about making that a priority and cultivating your relationships, then it becomes part of what you do. And it doesn't need to take long at all. Which is why I made it part of an exercise in my signature program or talk, the Grateful Day. Exercise number 3 is reaching out to one person every day. So the more that we are doing that and being really mindful about being the one to reach out rather than waiting for it to come to us, then we are in control. When I was grieving, I had a wonderful support system, but they couldn't read my mind and know what I needed from them. So I learned very quickly that the best way for me to get what I needed was to tell people and ask for it. And sometimes to be the one to reach out to someone when I wish that they had reached out to me, but they had their own fears and worries that prevented them from reaching out. So you can take control of your own life. We can't control what comes our way, but we have 100% control over how we can reach out to other people.
How do we know what we really need? I find that in those seasons where we need support, and then you potentially ask somebody like, hey, what do you need? They don't really know. Like, how do we as individuals, when we're going through a season, unpack what we really need in those moments?
And I view it as falling into 2 categories. There's the concrete, like I need someone to pick up my child or take care of the dog or clean my house. Very concrete. And then there's the emotional or more abstract. And when we have our quiet moments, that is when we can tap into what we need, whether that is spending time in nature, doing some journaling, getting in touch with what's going on in your life, and even the shower. So often people get ideas in the shower. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The water hitting our head, nobody's bothering us, hopefully, when we're in the shower. So it is often a time when ideas can come. So if you are in a position of going through a difficult time, being intentional about having some quiet time to reflect upon that can be really helpful in whatever way works for you. If you're a writer, journal about it. If you like nature, spend some time in nature and intentionally think about what you need and how you can reach out to people to have your needs met.
For that person that has been listening in that is on the brink of changing their life, but they're carrying a lot, Peggy. They're wanting to be able to show their full selves. They're wanting to really cross or hurdle over that barrier, but they feel just tethered to a past version of themselves. What would be your encouragement? What would be your advice for that person to really begin the work and commit to being the best version of themselves?
I would say that first, to honor that it takes courage and vulnerability, but the courage comes first. Courage, vulnerability requires courage.
Mm.
And anytime we're making a change, our brains want to keep things familiar and safe. Even when we want growth, our brains will often work against us. So it takes a tremendous amount of courage and intention to make those changes. And letting other people know that you are making a change or working on something, then other people can help you. But once again, that requires some level of vulnerability to let other people know what's going on. But it does help because then people know how they can support you in you making this change. And once again, it also goes back to repetition because our brains want to keep things safe and familiar. So if you are working on a big change, it is something that deserves your attention every morning to kind of tell your brain, this is what I'm doing now. Help me with this goal, being really clear on what the goal is, writing about it, thinking about it. And then the reticular activating system will actually help you with the goal achievement part. But it absolutely requires courage and vulnerability.
Courage and vulnerability. Peggy, this conversation has really helped me unpack and unravel a lot of things that I'm even thinking through personally and professionally. And I appreciate you so much for this conversation, for your time, for your wisdom, for your heart. If you had 60 seconds to share with all of our listeners a message that would encourage them, equip them, but then leave them with an actionable or practical tool that they could be able to use today that can get them on the journey of living a more grateful life that is rooted in peace, that's rooted in taking those moments of awe, what would you say?
I would say before your head hits the pillow at the end of the day, commit to writing a gratitude letter. Think about somebody from your past who's had an impact on your life. And this is different from a thank you note. This is really getting into the feeling of gratitude that you have for that person and the relationship. And spend time with your hand writing it before your head hits the pillow. Make that commitment to write one gratitude letter at the end of the day.
That's it. I'm going to commit, Peggy. I'm going to commit so much. Where can we find you? How can we continue to support you and uplift your message?
The best way would be through a free resource that I have on my website that teaches 5 simple ways that people can implement gratitude into their lives. It's just drpeggydelong.com/thegratefulday.
That's easy. Anybody listening in, go to the website. I have gotten so much and I feel so full from talking to you, from listening to you and learning from you this morning, Peggy. Thank you so much for your heart, for your wisdom, for your work, and for your strength and your courage and your boldness to continue to keep going in the face of adversity. I thank you. And for our listeners that are still listening in with us, one of the questions that we always ask our listeners, what culture are you spreading? The energy you bring is the culture you create, and go make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Contagious Culture Podcast. If this episode challenged or inspired you, hey, take a second to share it with someone who's building culture in their world. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself join the movement. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube at Kyle S. King for more tips, tools, and methodologies to be able to help you create this ecosystem of absolute excellence. Until next time, lead boldly, live intentionally, and remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching.